Right here we've got the RX 590, the Fatboy from XFX. This got sent in about 12 hours before the NDA broke, and honestly that was not enough time to properly review a graphics card, so I've spent a few extra days testing it out against the likes of the GTX 1066GB, also the GTX 1070, RX 580 Nitro, and also the Vega 56 reference card. So let's get on now with this review where we test a heap of different games and then talk about the tech inside this thing, how it differs from the RX 580 mainly, and who is this for and whether you would want to purchase it or not. So there it is, the benchmarks are done and dusted with the RX 590, the fat girl. That's mainly because I like to call my tech products either a lady or a thought, just depends on the how good the product it is itself. And what we have here is definitely a lady. She goes pretty high when it comes to the gaming performance. As we saw with those benchmarks in games, it depends on the game itself. Some titles will favor AMD, some titles will favor Nvidia. Forza Horizon 4, for example, did very well on the AMD cards. Ironically enough, that's a more later and greater title. When we look at a game like Dota 2, that performed better on the Nvidia cards. Very popular multiplayer title, but in ways I feel like it's an outdated engine too. So it does depend on what games you play, but ultimately something like the Firestrike score will give you solid numbers that you can reliably make a purchasing decision off. And so with that, I decided to do a cost per point analysis of all these graphics cards here on the bench. This does, I feel, bias a little bit towards AMD in these graphs, but it does show you overall that the RX 580 out of the graphics cards I tested here today does represent the best value for money in raw gaming performance. That's not taking into consideration power consumption and other features that the board partners and also the software developers like Nvidia and AMD themselves will offer with the cards. But it does stand to reason that the RX 590 is coming awfully close to the RX 580, and it's actually a bigger gap over the Vega 56. And when we look at the overclocking itself, because it's important, when we took a look at this graphics card, I did like the overclocking. It was easy to do on this card. Even though the core clock itself only went an extra literally 20 megahertz, that's all I could get out of it. When I went to 1620, it actually lowered the scores in Firestrike, so it wasn't technically stable. But when we went to the memory slider, we just simply slid that to the right and got from 2000 megahertz quad pump to 2250 megahertz quad pump. So over a 10% increase on the memory performance, and that's where the VGA bias will limit the overclocks on the memory. We got literally a 10% performance boost in GTA 5, and then when we looked at 3D Mark Firestrike, that gave us a big boost as well. So the RX 590 is being held back by its memory configuration on the graphics card itself. And so if you do buy this graphics card, you can just easily raise that memory slider, just a one-click overclock, and you'll be getting some very good performance figures. Power consumption didn't go up as well, and this card itself, the XFX Fatboy, did do very well in terms of thermals, but also noise. The auto speeds didn't top 80 degrees, it went to 79 degrees and 43% fan speeds, and it was actually very quiet at these levels. If you're in summer, for example, so if things are getting hot in your climate, you may wish to set the fan speeds manually to 60%, and that will drop the temperatures dramatically. So it depends on where you live, but if you like low noise, this card can definitely offer that. But if you also like keeping your components cool, this card can also offer that without getting too noisy. 80 and also 100% however, do get very noisy on this graphics card, just like most other solutions. Anyway, onto the tech itself. It has the same amount of stream processors as the RX 580. However, this time around they're using 12 nanometer versus 14 nanometer, and that allows for the higher clock speeds. Pretty much similar to the Ryzen 2000 series, where they did make some architectural tweaks, but they also went from 14 nanometer on the 1000 series to 12 nanometer plus, as they called it, on the Ryzen 2000 series. And this enabled for better power efficiency, but also higher clock speeds. It's kind of the same deal, except you're losing the power efficiency because you are getting the higher clock speeds on this graphics card. Essentially a better RX 580 that definitely topples a GTX 1060, and it sort of comes in between that GTX 1060 and GTX 1070 level, as well as coming in between the RX 580 and Vega 56 level. I actually did like it more than the Vega 56 cards personally. I thought with that easy overclock, it did start getting closer to Vega 56 levels. And you do get the benefits of FreeSync, and it's not too pricey. I mean, at $280 US, this is what you can buy it for at street retail prices. The RX 580, when I took a look at the street prices, they're around about $240, at least for the Sapphire edition that I used in today's review. You can get RX 580s that are going cheaper for around $200 US to $210. So if you're after a bargain in that sense, you may wish to go snatch one of them up, as it will skew the price per point, as we showed before, price per frame, more towards the RX 580 than ever. But anyway, all in all with this graphics card, it is a nice little unit from XFX. I like the actual implementation of the card itself, but speaking of the RX 590, is it worth it? That's probably the biggest question. And something you'll notice with graphics cards is that the higher the performance, the less value orientated that graphics card becomes. Take for instance an RTX 2080 Ti, an exaggeration, but you'll get the point. You compare that versus an RTX 2070, and you can literally get two RTX 2070s for less than an RTX 2080 Ti. And in terms of raw price performance, they'll scale a lot better. And so I feel like the RX 590 is sitting right where it should be. It does perform better than an RX 580. It does perform less than a Vega 56, but at the same time, it's also better value than a Vega 56. But it's not as good value as an RX 580, but it is coming close to those value levels, and you're still getting more absolute performance, if that makes any sense. So it's not too bad of a card, but then there's the other argument on the other side of the fence, and that is that we have been sitting on this technology for quite a long time, and same with NVIDIA with their 10 series cards. We were on those for a long time, then we went to the RTX 2000 series and we didn't get a whole lot there, and so of course, as an enthusiast, I would like to see more innovation and more development, and with that, more price performance. But really, when it all comes down to it, we get what we get, and I can only base my recommendations off what we have at the time. So I am looking forward to the 7 nanometer Navi graphics cards, but who knows when they'll come, and when they come, I'm really looking forward to them. I'm also looking forward to maybe the RTX 3000 series, if that's going to use a smaller node as well. So good times ahead, and this kind of feels like a stopgap measure that doesn't do too bad. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think of this big, I guess it's more than a 2 slot, I'd call it a 2.5 slot graphics card, XFX Fatboy RX 590. They've definitely done a good job with the carbon fiber black shroud, back plate, as well as bringing in 3 display ports, a HDMI and DVI out, as well as bigger fans than usual. And it weighs in at roughly 865 grams. So solid unit itself. It is coming in, at least from what I can see, some of the cheapest of the RX 590 lineup. And that's about all there is for it today. If you enjoyed this one, then be sure to hit that like button, give it a big fat boy like for us, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.